So hi, I'm Ian Morris. I am the Head of Wellbeing here at Wellington College, and I'm a DRM practitioner. As I look back on it, I realise now it was a meeting that changed my life. But I sat with Maria and some other colleagues, and I listened to Maria talk about the dialogue roadmap and about restorative practices, and I just thought, I just want more of this. I want to know more about what the DRM is. I want to learn from you. Maria then came back a short time later and spent a week at Wellington just observing, looking at the place, and she wrote a report on what she'd observed and made some really interesting recommendations around how we could start to introduce the dialogue roadmap and start introducing restorative practices. And being a DRM practitioner, that was the way I want to be in the world, the way I want to present myself to other human beings, the way I want to be met. So I did this 6 days and then started using the dialogue roadmap here. So had some interesting experiences with mediated dialogues between colleagues who'd encountered some difficulties, and then had some mediated dialogues between pupils who'd encountered difficulties. The deep change that happened within me was not just the ability to sit and be fully present listening to somebody, but to shift from listening with the ears and listening with the rational part of my brain to listening with my heart. So really being able to kind of open up empathy and sitting with another human being and really recognising how they're feeling and being able to share that with them. I found that has made a profound difference to me, not just at home with my wife and my children, in a massive way in the classroom as a teacher. So most of my day is spent in a classroom with young people. And what I've really noticed is really intentionally being able to be fully present for young people when teaching and really listening to them. It has transformed the way I am as a teacher.
My name's Tom Wayman. I'm the Deputy Head Pastoral here at Wellington College, and I've worked at the college for a number of years in a variety of roles. My interactions with the principles behind Maria Arpa's dialogue roadmap have taken on several guises over the years here. I think at the heart of it there are two parts to it which I think particularly resonate and I find of a day-to-day use here. The first one is the clear distinction between a need and a strategy to meet that need, and Maria's delineation between the fact that needs don't conflict but the strategies do, and how we disentangle therefore the strategic conflict and distinguish that from the need-based similarity between parties who are often wanting the same outcome but disagreeing about how to go about that. That distinction and disentanglement for me is a critical mode of helping many pastoral situations move on to a more productive, a more constructive phase. Well, if you like, we are in the adolescent childcare business here, and with 900 odd boarders as well, there are a lot of strategies to meet some often quite complex needs. And within, say, a boarding house or any pastoral context, that could be a common room, it could be the school cafe, you are jostling up against each other's needs often. And I think to have a literacy about what it is that you are wanting, how far those needs are being met, and are there things which are frustrating those.
I'm Katie, I'm a French teacher here at Wellington. I've been here for 8 years. I used to be AHM in a boarding house, which is an assistant house mistress, which was part of the reason why I wanted to do DRM in the first place. I had the kind of like pastoral motives, I guess, to want to kind of get to know, I suppose like different techniques and different kind of ways in to get to know the girls and how to help them in their relationships with each other. We were talking about things that we found difficult in our lives, or particular reasons that we had for maybe personally wanting to do it, alongside the professional reasons. And I mentioned a relationship with a family member that I found particularly challenging. And I said, this person always makes me feel like this. And Maria stopped and kindly and directly, which is Maria's brilliant balance, said, well, no one can make you feel anything. And that it made me feel I felt very tearful. It's something inside me that went ugh when she said it, and that line sticks with me a lot, actually.
I'm Adam Hicks. I've been, I think, physics teacher here at Wellington for 8 years now. So I'm the head of physics here, having previously been an engineer. Because yeah, we had situations with various individuals being unhappy together and how we could work that one through. And I really, really enjoyed it and appreciated it. And I always had this question at the back of my mind being like, how can this approach be taken into kind of an institution? So it was at that point that I kind of had kind of a brief exchange with Maria on it, being like, this is what I've learned, this is what I'm interested in. Do you think it's worth me coming? And she said, absolutely, come along. And then, yeah, that's how I got involved. I think now when you're seeing someone that's kind of really stuck in the middle of a situation and being very angry about it, to be kind of more empathetic and step back and kind of feel, oh no, this is just them expressing what is going on inside, and we need to let that come out.
Hi, I'm AJ Stark-Ordish. I'm the chaplain here at Wellington College, and I also teach some philosophy and religion. I'm coming up to being here for about 5 years. Yeah, so my main role here is to look after the spiritual and religious life of the college, both here and recently at our prep school as well, taking that on, embedded in the pastoral care team, do a little bit of other pieces around sport, but mainly focus on all the kind of people and meaning aspects of life, which I really like. It just felt to me actually a bit like coming home, and to be part of a community of practice for that year was really quite special. And yes, it was challenging at parts. It asks us to consider quite a lot of things that are quite personal and quite internal, and also to reflect on how we engage with others, and that kind of really trying to live into that as much as possible. And I really picked up the idea of domination culture and attempting to live in a different way and model something else, and that feels really important for me, and that's become a kind of life ethic. That way of being, that way of showing up in the world is something that I try and do all the time, and I think that's changing me, and I think might be part alongside the others here at Wellington in changing the systems and structures that we find ourselves in.
Hi, I'm Harry Wright. I'm a biology teacher at Wellington College. I've been working here for 11 years. Teaching is my principal role, but I'm also a tutor and a sports coach like most of the other teachers here. So Maria delivered a couple of sessions to Wellington staff during beginning of term CPD sessions. Overall, I guess, it provided me with a different way of understanding behaviour and relationships, which it's been pretty powerful really in my personal life. It's been very useful in tutoring. We've applied it directly, so employing the dialogue roadmap in school with students, and in some cases groups of students, and with staff. So yeah, professionally and personally it's been a very kind of enriching and helpful course and experience.
The one aspect that's really affected me is Maria's ideas around domination culture, and just starting to become aware of how power dynamics work, not only in big organisations, Wellington is 1,500 people, pupils and staff, but also friends, families, and just observing how power dynamics work. After the 1 year training, I felt really, really confident to then be able to offer the dialogue roadmap as a service to people. And since I qualified in 2019, I've done dozens and dozens of cases with pupils, with colleagues, and what happens every single time I meet one-to-one with someone who's going through a bit of a difficult time is, once they know that they can trust in the process, that they know that they can trust that this is confidential, that I'm taking care of them, that I'm fully present, that I'm listening and paying attention, you can physically see the weight of the conflict easing on their shoulders. And it's really not uncommon after 1 or 2 or 3 one-to-one sessions with somebody, just that one-to-one work of really listening, really being present, making an empathic connection, giving good feedback that helps them to understand a situation better, they can put down the difficulty that they're holding. They can just let go of it. So in the last 10 years, my relationship with Maria has really grown and developed. And I look back on that first meeting in 2014, again with a smile, because I didn't realise at the time that I was welcoming into my life someone who was going to be a massive influence on me. The thing that she does better than anybody I've ever met is she can step outside of a system and call you to come and step alongside her and look at things from her perspective. So what Maria brings to any organisation is a deep understanding of how that organisation is actually functioning. So she sees things that nobody else sees. But she also helps you to understand your place within that organisation, how the way that the organisation works might be creating tensions and difficulties and conflicts within you, and then how you can learn to be at peace with that or resolve those conflicts. And the quality of the support that she's offered me over the 10 or 11 years that we've known each other has been exceptional and unparalleled.
In such a busy place like this, it's very easy to not be present ever, and constantly be thinking about the next thing or the thing you haven't done or the email you need to reply to. And that's definitely something that is my kind of instinct, to constantly be, and I think the difference that DRM has given me in my tutoring is that I go in now, not every time, but I go in, I think generally, without a sense of agenda. I feel like I have got to know myself better as a result. And maybe this is like possibly more of a female thing, that I've always been quite apologetic and I think outwardly fairly confident, but inwardly having that classic imposter syndrome. And I remember Maria mentioned the jackals, and that was great, because actually it helped me kind of almost like see them, and you see the things that you tell yourself, and just noticing them and being aware of them. So that's been really cool.
One thing that's always been important in the role that I've held here at Wellington and elsewhere is standing up for the human in the system. That always feels like a core part of the job, and the DRM is a wonderful tool and resource to do that, to stand up for humanity of individuals and of groups in a system that can sometimes, just through bureaucracy, dehumanise and exclude. So it's really important for me to have that lens and to help other people remember that dwelling in humanity is important alongside all of the goal-oriented things that happen in a place like this.
Since doing the DRM, I've just started my tutorials this year quite often saying, come on in, what do you want to talk about today? And that's it. At the start that completely floored the students. They said, when you get going with it, especially when you've got time, you haven't got an agenda, it's not I've got to be somewhere, you can just listen. I've ended up having some really deep conversations with some of my students. Again, the conversation for them to take whichever way they want, but problems have been encountered, they've come to solutions. For them, it's brilliant. They've come away with a solution to a problem that I don't think they necessarily knew they had. For me, that's been really, really fulfilling, being able to be part of that and actually help someone move forwards. I'll get it wrong, but there was one of Maria's quotes, which was along the lines of, we go to war over the conversations we don't have.
Yeah, one further thing we've done relating to using the DRM is Ian and I designed and ran a session for housemasters, for HMs and assistant HMs, basically on language use. So how to use principles of DRM, concepts from DRM, when you're communicating with students. And the key thing, essentially, being non-confrontational in your language, and several of the HMs involved in that session gave us positive feedback. They were really interested at the time, and they also gave us positive feedback on how things had gone when they'd employed those.
Over the years I've done a number of really, really interesting cases, and there are a few that kind of really stick in my memory. So about 3 or 4 years ago, a case was referred to me involving 2 boys, and one of them had used a racial slur, and this had really kind of powerfully affected a boy in his year group who was black, and we did a really good piece of work, some one-to-one work with each of the boys, and they were both willing to come to mediated dialogue, and had a really powerful mediated dialogue with them, where they were able to really start to see each other as humans again, having kind of created monsters of each other in between, so after the racial slur was used. Another case that sticks in my memory is again with some pupils. A boy who had taken a screen grab of an image of a girl in a bikini in his year group, and one of his friends had kind of outed the fact that he'd done this, and this of course caused huge problems between him and the girls involved, because they'd previously been friends. And what was amazing was that both the boy and the 2 girls involved had the courage to sit down with each other in a mediated dialogue. And again, it was a really kind of powerful and humbling experience to watch the boy courageously take responsibility for what he'd done, and take responsibility for the impact that it had, but also the way that both of the girls who decided to meet with him were willing to sit with him and again rebuild a human relationship after quite a difficult piece of conflict. Some other areas that the DRM has been really practically useful at Wellington have been to do with looking at, so in teacher language, our kind of behaviour and discipline policy. So we had a major rethink of how as a community we deal with, for want of a better expression, people getting it wrong or pupils getting it wrong. And we had a big review of the use of sanction, the use of punishment, and I was able to bring a DRM perspective and a restorative perspective to how we then re-envisioned our policy. There's still a way to go with that, I think. So like all schools, I think we rely a little bit too heavily on the kind of the punitive and the disciplinarian. But I think we are much more further down the road of taking a restorative approach, and colleagues are encouraged, where something isn't working, to have a one-to-one dialogue with pupils rather than instantly reach for a sanction or a punishment. So the DRM, so since my training and since training colleagues, the DRM is having a real tangible impact at Wellington. And the other thing that's been really wonderful is that as people have an experience of the DRM, maybe just in a one-to-one or through a mediated dialogue, of course they tell their friends about it and they tell their colleagues, and that's how the casework begins, is the word spreads, and people will sidle up to me in the staff room or around college and just say, I've got this thing that isn't quite working, can you help? And I'll offer them some one-to-one time with them. Oh, Ian, have you got 5 minutes? By which they mean, have you got an hour? But you know, the word is spreading, and people are they know it's a thing at Wellington, that there is a service and a resource that's available to them.
So Maria has worked alongside the college for a number of years now, and in many ways has had 3 roles. Firstly, she's done some outstanding staff training, and her very manner, which is unpretentious, straightforward, laced with good humour and vivid anecdote, means that she's an excellent teacher in her own right, and brings to what could otherwise feel a rather theoretical approach, a lived experience, and as such she is a really good teacher of teachers. Secondly, she's worked with some of our parents at times and in different scenarios. Again, she's spoken to parents, and indeed she's worked with some of our parental body where they have needed to be part of a supporting process in reaching a resolution about conflict. And so as such, through the work and the leadership of Ian in particular, but also other colleagues who I know have been trained to a high standard in this respect, it means that we have a culture of managing the inevitable difficulties of working alongside a lot of other human beings and their competing priorities with I think real cogency and a values-led system which has in the DRM a very, very tangible identity as well.